So Gunnar, welcome to Genius Leadership Show.
Thanks a lot. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited for our conversation because I have no clue where it will turn turn us, but I really love the topic why I invite or the focus why I invited you, and I'm really looking forward to sharing what you're doing at Netlight with others. But to start with, I would like to ask the intro question that I'm asking every of my guests: what is leadership to you, and who is a leader?
What is leadership to me? That's a great question. To me, I'd say thinking about leadership is most interesting in the context of collaboration. Like, how are we doing things together? How can we do things together in a way that is, that is positive, that is either if it's like towards working a goal or if you're focusing on the process, but leadership is interesting in the context of collaboration. Mm-hmm. Because I'm really thinking that the best, it's a classic, but the best results are achieved when we work together. That the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. All of these classical sayings. And so I think that the role of a leader, or I don't want to get stuck in a leader, because I rather talk about leadership, because I think it's more about how to create a space where where collaboration is thriving. We can do things together when you create the intention of doing something together, which sends you in the right direction. And often that is inclusive in the sense that you will need the different parts to be a part of the decision making and be active in driving the, let's say, change that you want to achieve. So for me, leadership is about creating that dynamic and making people actively and enthusiastically engage in what you want to do. Like that's how I think about leadership. At least one aspect that is the closest to mind to me. How you do things together in a good way.
That is a red thread for all the guests and all conversations that I've had so far in this on this show, and I really like it how it actually taps into leadership as serving the people whom you're leading. It's not about kind of being the one who points with the whole hand and saying that's how we're going to do. It's really about finding the opportunities to collaborate and find the synergies. And it's really something that a lot of leaders who admire me and who inspire me have in common. So maybe it's a bit of a bias here that I just invite those kind of leaders who inspire me, but I'm yet to meet a person who is really saying that leadership is something else than getting people together.
Yeah.
And actually that transition, you want to say something?
No, I wanted to add on to that, because I really liked your phrasing of the leader rather being some kind of enabler, or it's more of a creating a space where people can be their best rather than telling them what's best. I mean, only from my perspective, in my daily life, in my work life, I work in the Swedish Stockholm tech in a like highly innovative environment. And I'm generalizing, but we have cross-functional teams and different competences and this really complicated goals and targets and problems that we try to work with, and all of that is good reasoning. You need different relevant perspectives. I mean, most people would say that that is a good idea, but if you can't really extract all of those good things, the innate good things in all of these people contributing with their best, then you're not gonna achieve what you were aiming for with these ideas. So it's really about to how would you say that, to make everyone compete with their best,
contribute
with their best self and with all that they they can, like to make them engage. And you know, I mentioned it before, but you know, to actively be a part of the decision making. I think that's really when things are starting to happening. You know, that it's not this one leader again that's doing the decision making, but that everybody's doing it. That's up on the table. And I think the most classic example, or I think that most people can, you know, what people think about, and which I think is a great study, is the Google study. We can link to it. I think it's interesting. Project Aristotle, when they looked at, you know, what makes efficient teams. We're not going to go into details here, but just that aspect of what they call psychological safety, that, you know, all the different members feel that they can ask questions and, you know, come up with ideas and not get, you know, shut down, or not afraid of, you know, trying. Literally, that's important to create this feeling as well. So there's a lot of different aspects of it, obviously, but I like that way of thinking about it.
Definitely, it's very important, and I actually talk about psychological safety quite often, and with the coaching style of leadership, which involves this getting people on board. Just today, before this interview, I was on a call with one of my clients, and we discussed it. He was like, "How can I be a better leader in that way?" And we were playing around with the different conversations he might have or has had, to see how can actually, instead of giving answers to people, how can he create or help others find their answers? Because this is the way to get people on board, right? This is the way to really get people buy into the mission and the vision of the company, or your personal, as a leader. That's the way to inspire people and to keep them with you for a long time, and really find the synergies. If you find their passion that actually fits in the vision and the mission of the company, that's the best way. It's a win-win. So, yeah. And you are doing something very interesting in Netlight about, or to get people on board better. And it's, as you mentioned, you're working in a tech environment, which classically still means man-dominated. And you have paid attention to one of the problems with that and created a purple pill. Can you talk about the history behind it?
Yeah, of course. So exactly as you said, I work in the tech industry, and the tech industry is still heavily like male dominated, you know, and that comes with certain culture, biases, and norms, you know, whether we want it or not. Even if we're trying to be attentive and challenge them, you know, they're there and they're all around. So I just thought that, you know, it's really nothing new, you know, like gender equality. Why is that important? I mean, first off, I'm really interested, and obviously it's important with every different aspect of equality. But for example, this project, we're focusing on gender equality because it's also obviously like a big obvious factor in our world. So it's bound to be effective to address it, you know, to create change. You know? And there's this obvious moral aspect of, you know, being a driver of positive change, and you want to be like a role model, and, you know, you have your personal incentives and motivation. But it's actually also like absolutely business critical to, you know, attract and retain top talent and to create the best products, etc. Like you really need everyone, and, you know, so it's really important, I'd say, in a lot of different aspects to work with these issues in our industry, you know. And historically, I mean, well before my time at Netlight, the company has a history of addressing these issues and trying to create change, both in the company but also in the industry here in Stockholm, which to me is really inspiring. And then if we're narrowing down on this initiative that I will tell you more about, like when reflecting on how we were working with these things, we realized that historically, most of these initiatives have been like led and driven and initiated by the women at our company. And I think that is, people can recognize that if they think about how it looks in their workplace, that it's, you know, it's a natural thing. You're the one who's, you know, you have the better, like, you're the one in need of change, you know, so you'll be the one trying to change it. But that's really unfair, because I don't know, it's you already have to fight against the current of the culture, and then you have to take that extra responsibility, and you have to, you know, be an overachiever to prove yourself, and you have to be a role model for the few women that's actually in the company, you know. So there's so many things that's wrong, you know, since we're all benefiting from having this, you know, equality branded company, or allowed to be able to attract and retain the top talent and being this great company. So out of that notion, a bit simplified, we realized that we have to, you know, do something and create, you know, focus on the fact that we all need to be a part of you know, fighting for equality, and in this case gender equality at our company, but also, you know, it trickles down to our lives, I guess. So about 3 years ago, or 3.5 years ago, we initiated a project which we called, as you mentioned, the Purple Pill, which is like an overarching strategic initiative to make men more engaged in our gender equality work. And the name, just to sort it out, because I guess people would be wondering, it's short version is it's a wordplay of the Matrix metaphor, you know, where Neo gets the choice to take the pill, what the color now was, like I can't remember, but, you know, to either, if he wants to see the truth and see the world for what it is, or he wants to live in denial and, you know, not reflect, look how the world is. And I like that metaphor, because it resonates with me personally as well, very strongly, because, you know, I'll try to be short. Like, by me growing up, I was fortunate in a lot of ways, and, you know, traveling a lot, and, you know, having all the good things in life that came with with my upbringing, and the luck I had, and, you know, to me, what became quite obvious, like the privilege that I had, you know. And, you know, once you realize that and see how the world, what it looks like and how it works, like, you can't really turn that off after that, you know, when you realize that. So
what actually brought you to this realization, or seeing your privilege? Was it the travels, or?
Yeah, I think it was like it's a complex, a lot of factors, obviously, and it builds over time. And, you know, looking back, I can see a lot of it more, you know. But I think for me, was really the travels, you know, when you were traveling to different parts and living in different parts of the world. It was not developed, but the people didn't have the same opportunities as me. You know, I came as a white rich man, etc., and you know, consumed my way around the world, etc., and to experience things, you know, and people are struggling like that. That was like one of the obvious moments, so to say, you know. But either way, so that's why I like the purple pill metaphor, because it's like you choose to see the truth, and how the world is. And so we've been building on that, and yeah, we tried more or less to, you know, focus on getting everyone involved in this work, saying like, not letting 25% of the company do 100% of the work. When it comes to
love that motto. That's how I found you, reading an interview about the initiative, and with that phrase stuck with me, really. It's so true, and it's so obvious, but it's just so easy to somehow miss it.
Yeah.
And I really love that you are doing this work and you're spreading the word about it. Like, and I'm grateful that you came to the show now to share it. And I really hope that you guys, Genius Leaders listening to us, will find some inspiration from this story, and we'll dig into the details now, how the guys are doing it at Netlight, and what exactly you can do, what are their learnings. But take it from this conversation. 25% of people should not work and do the 100% of the work. This is so powerful, and I'm really grateful that you came up with that. So tell us more in the details. What does the purple pill mean in practice?
That's a great question. As I mentioned, it's in the overarching intention to make everyone contribute. So, and there will be a lot of different what's a modern word, perhaps value streams into making that happen. Everything from communicating so people engage more in challenge and can be more supportive, and but we also try to make concrete things. And one thing I want to share with you, because I think it's a strong concrete thing that I've also been doing with some clients, and we're trying to spread it here in Stockholm. And please reach out to me too if you want to know more. But one thing we were realizing was that if I had like a evening time development module where we invited everyone who wanted to be a part of a gender equality molecule, it was me, perhaps 2 other guys at the office, and then 30 women, and the usual suspects who were actually already leaning into this kind of conversation, and we were talking around a lot, and we got the notion that a lot of the men around us were really interested in the topic, but they were just afraid to lean in. They were scared to be wrong, or to we have a Swedish expression to stomp on somebody's toes. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
I don't know.
I think step on the toes you say in English, but I'm not sure.
Step on the toes, etc. So we experimented a lot, but what we do now is that we invite men only to these lunch workshops, and it's lunchtime, so it's easy and convenient, and it's something nice. And we talk about gender equality and inclusive leadership. Because with having men only, they lower the thresholds for joining for a lot of people, and everybody's beginner in this content. So that's really interesting. And what we do is that we put gender equality in a high level general context and in a Netlight context, and we talk about the connection to inclusive leadership, which I want to do as well after this, because I think that's a good bridge to how we started this conversation. And and then we just share stories, we share perspectives, because everybody when we check in, the stories just come flowing out. It doesn't matter who it is, like there's a lot of stories there, and then we just talk, listen, reflect, learn, and it's really powerful. The goal is to there's a lot of value in just the meeting itself, because that really opens up and people get more attentive, and there's a heightened sense of awareness of the norms and biases that we have that are prevalent, but also we leave with concrete tips and a toolbox, so to speak, for how to react, or rather maybe act also in certain situations. And and often people leave like as purple pill or ambassadors, so to speak, and we spread the network and so on. And so it's really an interesting concept where actually something concrete comes out of it, and it's really great. It makes the concepts available for a lot of more men than it would have been otherwise. So it's a great way of spreading the word towards men.
I want to point out, or kind of stop a bit longer on a couple of things here. How you lower the threshold. And as you said, 25% of people should not do the 100% of work. But that meant that what you have noticed, that 75% out of them, quite a lot were actually interested and wanted to learn more, become better, but they were afraid. And what you're creating here, it's a bit exclusive in a way, right? But that is the way to come to the inclusion for real. So guys, I really want you to take it with you. It's important to look at, okay, if I want to bring more people to the table, whichever way, equality, we're talking whether it's some other kind of equality, gender equality, whether it's real functional diversity, which we're going to talk about more on this show in the future. Whatever it is, whatever aspect you take, if you see that someone is not on board, take them aside and help them to come to the level of the others at the table. That's what I do quite often with the team coaching that I'm doing, or team development, where I facilitate the conversations, but then I notice that someone is not on the same page. That means that I put more effort. I take those people one-to-one, I book the meetings, and I really try to help them to understand what others are talking about. And I don't need to do it in the front of the others, because that will be maybe felt humiliating. It might threaten their feeling of psychological safety even, right? Because they're already feeling that they are worse in some way, maybe, or slower or whatever in this room. So bringing it up publicly can make it even worse. So I think what you are doing is a really great example of how to get to that same page with everyone, whatever kind of situation you're talking about with a team. Take those people who are not on the same page and put some extra effort into getting them on that level that the others are having.
Yeah, exactly. You're completely right. And in the beginning there, you stressed a really important point, because we also, we have some people and a lot of women like asking, so what are they doing in these meetings? Is it exclusive? Why I'm not invited? So this is not the silver bullet, and we try to be as open as possible in our communication and factors about, like, this is not it. This is not the answer. This is not the only thing. Like, we need to have this conversation with you guys, because that's the real sharing of perspectives. Like, this is just one aspect of the plethora of important things that needs to be done in order to engage properly in this conversation. But it's an important stepping stone for many. So we deemed it relevant to, it's not optimal to talk about gender equality only with men and do that one time, but for, if that's what it takes for some people to engage more and then to be able to flower and engage, that's great, right? So this is one of the things we do. And we always also have a lot of events where we are, cross spreading or cross pollinating people, etc. Of course, so that's a really good point.
Yeah. I wanted to also ask you for a bit of a concrete examples. What kind of things did you discuss there? You said that there are a lot of stories that the guys who are attending are having a lot of things to share. So can you give us a couple of examples of those things that people might have walking around wondering, or I don't know, not being sure about what they should do, or how they would act or react in the perfect case, and how do you discuss those things?
Yeah, so it can be, we usually have like we divide into smaller groups for it to be more, most of you have experienced that you can be more honest and open. It's a more, if you're a small scale group, and sharing becomes easier when you do like a round of check-ins, just so everyone can speak and you open up. People bring their intentions and you feel the energies in the conversation. And we usually invite people to share something, like either why they're there or what they think about gender equality, or a situation recently that got them to think about these aspects or something. And then it can be anything from, I have a girlfriend or a sister, and I realize, coming to think about this thing, so they're very interested. I need to understand more. Or, I got bullied in school for these things, or the classic locker room talk. I feel uncomfortable with my group of friends, and we don't know how to get out of it. Or there happened this situation at the client today. My female CEO is doing this and that, and the other is reacting like this. And there's all different kinds of stories, and people have a lot of them, which is great. And then we build up on that and pick it up and let the conversation, leads us where it comes. And then if and that's usually, boom, the whole hour is gone like that. simplified. But we also do, if you know, if we stagnate or we want to go in a certain direction, or if we have a certain theme, for example, we also have, you know, I've been talking a lot with a lot of female colleagues about this, obviously, about what we're doing and the concepts, and we have, and I've asked them to share, you know, their experience that they wanted, you know, when they have been thinking about, you know, in this situation, I felt extra vulnerable, or I would appreciate if someone spoke up or something. It could be in our world, again, for example, in a planning meeting with a team, and, you know, they come with ideas and people don't listen, or they don't get the chance to speak up, or people are even throwing derogatory comments to their ideas, or you know, all of these different situations where you can feel that, or even, you know, that when somebody feel insecure about sexual harassment at some place, you know, there could be so many things that are happening in a day-to-day lives in our world. So that also gives that, you know, that aspect of it really happening. You know, it's real talk, it's real stories, you know, and that from people they know, even though it's anonymous, obviously, you know, it's that also makes a strong impression, and you know, it really shows in all clarity how it really is, you know. So we try to dig into that and see how would one act or react or support or work with that.
And here again, I want to point out the very smart thing that you're doing, that you are giving the word to both sides, but you are actually the mediator in between. So you give the space for women to share, your female colleagues to share what is going on for them and how they experience the workplace or the clients that you're working with or they're working with. And then you share those stories, but you do it anonymously, right? And at the same time, you take those stories, you bring them without the name. So for the men in your organization, it's easier to discuss them because you kind of get some of the emotional aspect out of it. There is still some emotion, which is very important for people to really buy into the idea and really get it landed. But this kind of, it would be me sitting in front of you and telling you, Gunnar, here's the situation that I've experienced in our workplace. And I would be talking about some other male colleague who is at the table at the moment. That would create a lot of tension, and that might close that person up, or I would not be able to share just because this person is sitting at the table. But you being this mediator makes it so much more powerful because it helps sharing for both sides. So this is really great idea that you genius leaders can take into your workplace or into your family as well. And as you said, Gunnar, in the circle of your friends. And here, I don't know whether you've been ever using this Killmiddag initiative.
Yeah.
So I'll just say it's a Swedish initiative. I need to double check whether they have the English version, but I think so. And I'll definitely put the link in the show notes. So Killmiddag is the kind of the boy dinner, if you translate it, or guys dinner. And there are a lot of scenarios or discussions. What kind of questions can you bring up with your male friends when you're hanging out? Because quite often it also happens that in the company, we're all so much into gender equality and so on. But when it comes to some grilling party or going to sauna together and so on, those locker rooms, the discussions are on a totally different level. And this initiative is really bringing you some structure that you can bring to your friends and say, hey guys, I would like to discuss those questions with you. And really start creating the change that way. Really lowering the threshold, because you're already given the structure, you're given some suggestions, and then you just start discussing. And as you said, Gunnar, more often than not, people already have some doubts. They have some thoughts, their observations, or feeling that, okay, here I might have done in a suboptimal way and so on, but they just don't have the space to share it. And they can't come to their female partner, for example, at home and say, hey, this is the situation, because they might feel judged, right?
Right.
So you're creating those spaces, and there are a lot of ways of doing it. And as I said, I'll share the link in the show notes, and just take the suggestions that Gunnar is given here and take them with you. Yeah. So you wanted to
vouch for that.
Yeah, I'm really happy, and thank you for being one of the examples of how can it be. how you can actually do it. You wanted to mention a bit more of different or other ways of how you're doing the work with the Purple Pill.
Right. No, so I think what I wanted to address also was the connection to the beginning of our
leadership
conversation with the inclusive leadership aspect. I was obviously touching that kind of description of leadership to me in the beginning, but here we frame it because I deem it to be, if not the most important, it's up there of the important leadership traits for the future. In a more and more complex and global world, and we work more and more together, it's exactly going to be that quality to make sure that everybody feels included, and to see all of these different perspectives and see all of these different people, and lift everybody up to the same space. I think that's going to be the most important thing to create a successful team or a project, or however you want to frame it. And that's why we call it inclusive leadership, because it's such an obvious connection here to, for me in the tech industry, this is one of the bigger, there's a lot of, as we said, there's a lot of different aspects and issues of this, but a huge and very normal one, or like a rather prevalent one, is this with the different of the sexes, right? And so you have to be able to, handle situations like this and talk about this and move towards making a better space for you and others around you. And that's how I think about inclusive leadership. And that's how we add that on to the gender equality topic in these meetings. And it's also a simple trick to get more men involved to talk about leadership, like a trait. But it makes perfect sense in this context, I think. Yeah,
it's great how you're connecting the dots. Have you ever had any resistance from any of your employees or maybe customers, men, for example, that say what the hell, why should I spend my time on that? Or even women maybe who say, who are you to drive this question? Whatever way.
That's a great that's a great question. I actually, to be honest, I still haven't met a man who didn't think this was a good initiative, or thought that this was a good thing or a good experience, or that it's an important topic. Maybe they're hiding somewhere in the corners. I haven't met them yet, and that's probably the truth. But not any open resistance towards this, which I love. The other question is a bit more tricky one, and I'm gonna because I think we have, as I mentioned, I think I have a big responsibility to be acting from my position of privilege and to address these things and try to be a driver of positive change when it comes to these questions. But I also think that in the bigger feministic project, so to speak, the role of men, the best way for us to support the feministic project is to be supportive. I think we have to understand that men are a part of the feministic project, or how you want to frame it, but we're not the most important one. It's the women that are in the center. So I think the task for me as a pro-feminist male is to make the concepts of feminism understandable for other men, and facilitate and pull them up and bring it to the table and make sure people understand that it's a important and a positive thing and put it in the right direction. But I'm not gonna be it's not about me. It is about me in some context, but you hear what I'm trying to say. Totally. So I try to. Sometimes I get those vibes, but don't stand there on stage and talk about feminism and yay, we men are talking equality. It's not about you. So, and I can totally understand that, and I just want to emphasize that it's not at least not my intention. It is to support the good cause. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I think it's important to bring it up because it is way out of comfort zone, I can imagine, standing there and talking about this question. And especially if you are in a room where everyone is represented, the men can be like, are you a feminist? What? and kind of lower your value in their eyes, maybe. And then the women, just as you said, they would be like, why are you taking our attention and our spotlight away from us? It's our question. So it is a very sensitive topic, and you have to have the courage and to be brave to actually step up and say, hey, I need to speak up here because I'm part of the solution. And I used to be, and probably still am, part of the problem. So I want to be part of the solution. I don't want to sit here and wait until you ladies fix it. So it's very important to bring up these discussions, I think, because we are all, it's again about the like, to be truly inclusive, you need to include everyone in this work. And it's not comfortable. It can be uncomfortable for both sides, and usually it is. But getting through this pain, it's really paying off. And it is a growth pain because you're developing as a person, you're developing as a society, and the work environment and work culture. It's growth pain, and it's so worth experiencing it and actually getting through it. And it's, again, when you are feeling that pain and then you get the result, you appreciate the result so much more, and you stick with it, and you really are engaged in it so much more than if you were just getting it served on a silver platter. Like, here you go, we're now equal.
Yeah.
I actually came up with two, while you were talking, I remembered two parts, and I want to bring those stories, a bit of anecdotal stories as examples, because gender equality is not only about women being suppressed in some way, it's also about men not having the space. And I always want to emphasize that I'm a feminist as well. And for me, it's about men getting as much space as women in some other areas where they're not allowed at the moment. For example, I used to work in Sweden, and you've had parental leave for ages now. I think it's since the 80s or so that it's been practiced. And generally, Sweden has a very generous maternity, like parental leave, right? And it has quite some time now for men, for fathers to take time off with their kids. And it's quite a common practice in most of the organizations that they take that time, they use it. And even though that is common practice, in one of the organizations where I worked, at some point, there was some question like, oh, where is Kalle? Now I'm coming up with a name. And then one of the engineers who was in his close to 60s, let's say, he said it like, yeah, Kalle's home changing diapers, with this kind of making the face. That is the judgment that is also against the equality. Me having my daughter who's 2 years old and seeing how much my husband has put in effort in like being a father, a very present father for her, how the bonding has been created in those crucial first times of her life, how he has been developing as a person by being a present father. That's the beautiful process. And by not being a gender equal society, we're taking this growth opportunity and those beautiful experiences away from the men. And it's so important to think about this part of the equation as well. It's not only about women losing something and not having some opportunities, it's about the man just as much.
Exactly, to the like true equality. Yeah, I totally agree with you. There's definitely a lot of stereotypes and norms that are toxic when it comes to male culture as well. Like, I think everybody agrees on that. We're also very limited in how we in the roles we get and the roles we take in society, in our lives.
And also
totally
personality, how guys are brought up to be strong and to not ask for help and not to express their feelings. And okay, I don't have a scientific proof for that, but most suicides are done by men, right? I could imagine easily that it comes from them not having the space and not having the permission throughout their lives to express their feelings. We
That's why
women
you're
cry,
supposed to have
right?
the kill middag.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And talking about the stereotypes, the other anecdotal story I wanted to bring up is actually about the stereotypes of what a feminism or who a feminist is. I did at some point a project with Ukrainian youth, like young journalists and activists who, and the topic was about the gender equality. The first part of the project was some of them coming from Ukraine to Sweden, and we had a program with a lot of meetings for them and like lectures and workshops with different professions that they can actually help them understand better the area and the topic. And the second part was a conference in Ukraine, and there we had around 60 people over 2 days with, again, speakers, lectures, panel discussions, and workshops. And my partner in that project found some volunteers, some school kids who would be like registering people at the entrance, showing them around the venue, giving them the goodie bag and those kind of things. And one of them at some point like, hey, I read the program now, because we had a poster with the whole program for the 2 days. And she's like, are you a feminist? And she looked at me like, she was really scared of that. And I was like, yes. And she's like, don't tell me you're a feminist. And she was scared about that, because from the discussion, how we, like, when we discussed it further, I realized that for her, feminist is some kind of angry woman. It's a bit of those Pussy Riot girls, or I don't know, someone who is like throwing off her t-shirt and just running around bare-breasted and really screaming at the guys and those kind of things. And I was like, no, like, do you believe that you have just as many rights as this other volunteer who was the guy? And she's like, obviously. Like, do you think you have the right to go to the school, the same school as he? She's like, yeah. So I was like, to me, you're a feminist as well. And that was shocking to her. It was totally shocking to her. But that's, again, those conversations that we need to take. And sometimes it's important to take them in with some sense of humor and turn it, and not go in defense and say, hey, like, you're offending me now at the moment, and those kind of things, even though it's a painful topic, right? As I said, for me, it hurts to see this inequality for both. As I said, for me, it's painful to see the man being suppressed as well. And even though I have those emotions, it's important to kind of have some distance and sometimes say, hey, let's have a bit of a funny discussion about it, and maybe give some funny examples of stuff like that, and not just push in an aggressive way. And really, we need to step by step be changing that perspective and definition of what feminism is about.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, it's obviously we all come from different backgrounds, have different stories, different upbringings. You know, you can't really blame someone if the person never got the chance to, you know, experience or reflect or you know, think about it in such ways, or have been, you know, their mind has been secluded somehow by, you know, other oppressive thoughts. Like, yeah, you know where I'm getting. Like, it's really hard to say to someone, you know, or I think that would be a trap, you know, to think that you know better than everybody else. But as you say, I think that pretty much everyone would agree that it's a good thing and it's a good intention to work towards creating a more equal society, and that we have you know, a moral obligation to make sure that everybody can, you know, have equal opportunities and have the same basic human rights, etc. So and the way to get there would be different for different people. You know, some people just haven't thought about it in a certain way, and you know, sometimes you can come closer with humor, and sometimes it's you know, I don't. So yeah, you're right. You're right.
Tell me, Gunnar, how are the results, or what kind of results do you see at the company and maybe with your clients, thanks to the initiatives, including the Purple Pill?
Yeah, so we see, you know, a generally more focus on these questions. Like, it's talked about more. the obvious effect of us highlighting these initiatives and more people being involved is that, it's just more in focus, which is great. So it's a greater general engagement in discussions, etc. People, it's a more open climate to share stories and to be vulnerable, and we, rethinking, our roles a little bit. But I also want to say, like, it's a constant. You can't really lean back and say that this is something that's done, and it's not like a goal we're reaching for, but it's really a process, like most things in this. But we definitely see more and more people leaning into these topics, and we're kind of leveling out on how much we do this. Like, and one stupid example would be, for example, me leading most of these lunches historically, but now it really becomes more and more dynamic, like organic growth, and it's happening in all the different offices we have around Europe, and it's really growing, the concept, so that's cool. But I said what it really results in is kind of an increased sense of responsibility, and for everyone to understand their responsibility, and a heightened sense, like it, and also a pride, a pride for participating and contributing, which is that is really strong to me, to really see people being proud of being part of this, and that in turn, as you said, like it's just a increased sense of community, in that way, that we more share this view, and that it's a heightened sense of that we see each other, as real people, etc. Yeah, and then there's different nuances of this, of course, but I said that it's a heightened sense of community around this topic. So and in the company, yeah.
What kind of future do you see for the Purple Pill initiative, or maybe you have something else in the pipeline?
No, we're continuing working to scale now internally. So our goal is for everyone, obviously, to attain these kind of workshops and make them flourish in any kind of way. And our company is very much driven by a belief in the individual, and that the individual take ownership and drive. So like it's not, once again, it's not like we said with leadership. This is not me. I'm just one part of facilitating a culture where this is generally happening, everywhere, where people start these conversations and engage, and take responsibility for each other, and are interested in each other. So hopefully that can grow, with a lot of different concepts, and it can be celebrating, or deep diving, or in coaching, and we have this fused into our mentorships program and on our onboarding programs, and it's really present in a lot of ways, and that's going to continue to grow. But what's really interesting is if we can also spread it outside of our company, obviously, to inspire and help other people to start, or just ignite the spark in a lot of different places, and in pretty much anywhere, I guess, would be our benefits. There's some of these initiatives coming up. I know there's already some gender equality, tech related networks in the city that we are help driving. We're like over 150 companies that is attached to it, and we're going to push these kinds of events out there. It's called TechEc. We can perhaps send that link as well. And so there's a lot of things happening that we try to not push but support, I'd say, to make a healthy organic growth out also in other places. And I would love to see that happen. Yeah,
that's great. I usually summarize with one question, but now I'm adding the second one as well, based on the feedback that I'm getting from our listeners. So the first one is, what would be your 3 tips of advice or pieces of advice for the genius leaders who are listening to us?
Okay.
To be the genius leaders that they can be.
Okay, so how to be the genius leader. Oh my God, what a question. But that's great. So building on, like adding on to what we've been talking about, you know, it's really to be present with the people around you, to be very open and transparent, and really like try to see the different people that you have around you that you're supposed to work with. You know, stakeholders is a really boring word for this context. It's not like that. See the humans and the people you have around you, but you're supposed to, you know, that is important in person, and really try to together come up with what's important, and to have an open discussion and continuously evaluate and iterate. Maybe that brings me to another point, like have an open, like not a boring word, but feedback, you know, continuously talk about what's important to you. Like, how are we doing? How are we feeling? What is important? Should we reevaluate what we're doing? If you have the time to do that, that's, you know, you can continually be present enough to take the right decisions in that moment, you know. And adding to that, when you created that culture, you know, then just, you know, trust the individuals to the extent that they feel confident to make the right choices. Because as the leader, once again, the leader, like you will not always, like you're not going to be the closest to every decision. You're not going to have all the information. Like you can, if you have a high level coordinating role and you have like a traditional leader, like that's fine. Like you're part of creating an intention and setting a direction and you know, structuring the project or the mission, etc. But like you're not going to be the one closest to all the decisions. But you know, so trust the individuals that are closest to take the right decisions. Because if you have this culture and you have this setup, then they will be able to, you know, take charge and take lead and ownership when they are engaged and present for every decision. And then you can make, you know, this kind of sense and respond leadership style, which is so much more powerful and effective. It leads to much bigger results than you could ever predicted or controlled, you know, because when you set these frameworks, the structures up, then you're bound to be as best as what you predicted, you know, and people are not going to be engaged and they're not going to be able to take the right decisions. But, you know, I'm obviously starting a whole new big topic about leadership. But okay, so what did I say? Trust the individual, be present,
and give feedback.
And give feedback a lot. And, you know, try to really work with this inclusive leadership style that we've been talking about. I really believe that. Yeah.
Love it, Gunnar. Last question based on the feedback from talking about feedback, based on the feedback I'm getting, is one action step that our listeners can take already today in the topic that we've discussed. For example, the gender equality. What can they do?
Invite your let's say I'm in a work context now, invite colleagues that you're not usually always talking to with a very friendly invitation, perhaps even talk to them to a lunch meeting where you have the intention of talking about important stuff. You can name the header "Real Talk" with a heart or something, and then you just say that my intention is to you know, talk about important topics, or, you know, however you want to frame it. If you have an intention, if you have a direction or something especially important, it could be gender equality, for example. And then, you know, especially in these digital times, a lot of people experience a distance, not only physical but emotional, and you know, this kind of invitation, I think, would, you know, it makes a lot of sense to create a stronger community and stronger relationships in this time and age. So really recommend that, because that would get a lot of interesting conversations going and a lot of different ideas and probably a lot of bonding. And you're gonna realize a lot of things about the people around you that you didn't know from before.
Hopefully for the better.
Right.
Usually. Genius leaders, we're looking forward to hearing from you regarding your action step. What kind of people did you invite? What topics did you discuss, and what has been the response and your learning? Just let us know, because that's also part for us to, like, our way of learning more. And now we're getting the geographical spread of this idea and this initiative, and we would like you to be part of it. Just hop on board. To summarize a bit, we talked about how travels are, for example, one of the ways to open your eyes and see the perspective, see your own situation from a different angle. How Gunnar, for example, experienced that he has a privilege in his life, and then he started leveraging on that to help the others to get those same privileges in the long term. I think it's also important to remember that not always you will see the results of that work of yours directly, instantly. So you need to be patient. And just remember that this is part of your legacy. You are just building your legacy one step at a time. We also talked about the exclusivity as one of the ways to the inclusive world and inclusive culture. So remember that sometimes you do need to take some people aside and have an extra conversation with them to bring them back to the table so that everyone can be on board. And I really like the tips that Gunnar has given to really be present and curious about the people around you, and really curious about their differences between themselves and between you and them. And then keep the feedback loop short. Just give it and ask for it all the time. It's a process, and you need to have that response time all the time so that you actually can progress in a healthy way. And last one, have trust. Have trust in your people. So this concludes the episode with Gunnar Risting from Netlight. And thank you so much for tuning in, everyone. Thanks, Gunnar. Bye.
Thanks for having me. It's great being here.